Hi, my name is Veronica, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation. How did that one do?
That was very good. Do it just maybe one or two more, okay? Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? I'm gonna tell you right now, you know things are really bad for Teofimo when even the guys that are trying to genuinely defend him end up making him look worse by accidentally telling too much of the truth. And this is exactly what happened when Tim Bradley spoke on the whole Teofimo situation. Tim did an interview right after these fights that took place on ESPN because he called the fights. So when he was asked about Teofimo versus all the other lightweights, the final four, right? For the most part, Tim Bradley was doing a great job of pushing ESPN's agenda. He was staying on the Teofimo code perfectly. But the problem was a little bit of the truth leaked out. Now, we all know that Tim Bradley, he works for ESPN and he was a top-ranked fighter himself. The way he was talking, and I'm not even exaggerating, you would have thought that Tim Bradley actually worked for Teofimo, like he was in his corner. He was Team Lopez. So he's using all of Teo's talking points. He's saying the fight shouldn't happen now, 3 to 5 years, but I still favor Teo to beat him. But earlier on in that interview, he says there's too much risk. That's the word that he used. He said it's too risky of a fight. He said, you guys have to understand, promoters have to protect their fighters. So you just put those words risk and protect it together, and that tells you the whole story. Nothing else that Tim Bradley said in that piece really matters because he just told the truth. And it's funny, even though once again, he was completely trying to cater to ESPN and Teo's narrative, he accidentally told the truth. And the truth was, that is too dangerous of a fight. He kept pushing it, man, that fight should be 3-5 years. They're only 23. Why they gotta fight each other now, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? He said, I know all the fans want the fight, but you guys gotta understand how the business works. And once again, there goes that word business. You guys see how the double standards work, right? Once again, ESPN, Max Kellerman, they're the ones that came up with that term. Floyd Mayweather was a great businessman. Like basically trying to say that he was just a cherry picker. He always fought bums and he was always picking easy fights. That's basically what they're saying. And they're trying to say they don't like him because of that. But when it comes to Teofimo Lopez, when it comes to Ryan Garcia, and I'm talking about all of old media, now all of a sudden being a businessman is a good thing. Waiting 2 or 3 or 5 years is actually a good thing. Fighting easier competition that is low risk, that's a good thing now. And it's just so crazy when, once again, I think about the comparison to Floyd Mayweather with Tim Bradley, because he kept saying, man, they're only 23. These guys are only 23, right? The funny thing about that is love Floyd Mayweather or hate his guts. The truth is, every fighter aspires to have Floyd Mayweather's success as a boxer. Floyd Mayweather is the closest man to reach $1 billion during his boxing career. And the crazy thing is, by the time Floyd Mayweather was 23, he had already beat Diego Corrales, Gennaro Hernandez, Angel Manfredi. These are big name fighters. These are very tough fights. Gennaro Hernandez and Diego Corrales, those were the 2 times when Floyd Mayweather was an underdog in his career. Then you got Angel Manfredi, which was another very dangerous fight. And then after Floyd Mayweather beat all of those guys, Floyd Mayweather was always calling out the Devin Haneys, the Gervonta Tank Davises, the Teofimo Lopezes in his divisions, or even above his divisions. He was calling out the undefeated Acelino Popo Freitas. He was calling out the undefeated Joel Casamayor. He was calling out the undefeated Nassim Hamed. None of these guys wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather. We're talking about a 23, 24-year-old Floyd Mayweather. None of these guys wanted to fight him. So it's terrible advice for Tim Bradley to tell this 23-year-old Teofimo he should wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years before he fights a Devin Haney. Let me tell you why that's a terrible idea. Because you're going to keep taking these low risk for low reward type of fights like Teo is about to do when he fights Kambosos. But just think about this for a second. What if Teo ends up losing to a George Kambosos or some other low risk, low reward type of fighter? He's going to lose to somebody for $1 million when he could have made $4 million right now against Devin Haney. And you got Bob Arum offering him $1.25 million to fight George Kambosos. There's no guarantee that he's going to win that fight. And like I said, if Teo completely takes Tim Bradley's advice and he continues to fight nothing but low risk, easy type of opponents, or at least guys that he thinks is going to be easier than that MBF list, you risk losing to one of those guys one day for a small paycheck. It makes absolutely no sense for Tim Bradley to say, we got to think more about the promoters. They spend money and all of this. They have to protect their fighters. But this is the thing, though. The problem that Teo is going to have is if there is great competition out there that all the fans want to watch, want to see you against, right? And once again, you continue to fight guys that no one has heard of or no one cares if you're fighting, then they're going to lose interest. That means they're going to stop tuning in. And once you reach that point, now even your promoter is losing money on you because he's paying you millions of dollars and no one cares who you fight. No one is tuning in. I mean, what's the point of calling these guys the Fab Four, but then say they should fight against each other in the next 2 to 3 or 5 years? It makes absolutely no sense. When a lot of the greatest fights that we've ever seen in the sport of boxing, fighters were around 23 years old. Mike Tyson was considered the baddest man on the planet at age 21. Listen, when you are 23 years old, the training wheels are off. You don't need any protection. No one needs to hold your hand when you're walking across the street when you are a 23-year-old world champion. There's no such thing as it's too early and they're not in their prime. No, you're a world champion. That's supposed to mean that you're the best in the whole wide world. You can't tell somebody that Teofimo, he's undisputed. He's the best in this division. Oh, but we need to protect him from this fighter or that fighter. Oh, but he's not ready right now. Wait, let's go ahead and let this marinate for 2 more years, for 3 more years. No, when you are a champion, you're supposed to be ready for everyone, especially when you're calling yourself undisputed. You're supposed to be ready for everyone. Now, it would be different if Teo was just a prospect coming up. It would be different if he was like an Edgar Berlanga, you know what I mean? Where he's barely turned pro, he's working his way up the ladder. Then you could say something like, man, give this guy a year or 2 before we throw him in there with the best guys in the division. But how is Teo ready for Lomachenko, but he's not ready for Devin Haney, Gervonta Tank Davis? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And then Tim Bradley, he started to use some more Teofimo Sr. and Jr. talking points. He started to say, well, the thing with Devin Haney is he doesn't have an identity. He needs to go out there and fight somebody first, etc., etc., etc. But this is what's not making any sense. They just offered Teofimo Lopez $4 million. You're telling me you're going to turn down $4 million because you believe your opponent is not ready? But then you're going to fight Kambosos for 1.25 or close to it? We'll see what the number will be. The 1.25 is what Teo's own promoter was offering him. And because Teo couldn't get any more money out of Bob, that's when he decided, let's let it go to purse bid, hoping that someone else will buy the fight and Teo will make more money. He ain't gonna make no more than $2 million. I would be very surprised if he makes more than $2 million. Whatever he makes, I can guarantee you it will not be $4 million. So it makes absolutely no sense when you're saying, you know, this fight should be built up and all this kind of stuff. But this is the thing. If Teofimo made $1.25 million in his last fight, which he did against Vasyl Lomachenko, and now he's about to make $4 million, hell, who knows? They probably could have pushed it to 5 just because it's close to 4 million. But you have an opportunity to make almost 4 times more than you made against Lomachenko. And Tim Bradley is telling us that Teo, he should turn that down and fight for 1.25? How does that make sense? I mean, how many 23-year-old fighters do you know right now making $4 million, $5 million? Not too many, right? And then Bradley, he started really saying some bizarre stuff. He started saying, I'm telling you fighters right now, stop calling fighters out, man. Stop calling fighters out. You want to be the hunted. But once again, guys, this is not what Floyd Mayweather did. Floyd Mayweather was calling everybody out. Muhammad Ali is known for calling out fighters in the most creative way. Showing up in front of their house. Popping up at their training camps. Calling out fighters is a big part of boxing. That's the reason why reporters always ask you, who do you want next? And that's also how you promote fights. Sean Porter beats Danny Garcia. Errol Spence jumps in the ring, calls out Sean Porter, right? Errol Spence, he beats Sean Porter. Danny Garcia jumps in the ring, calls him out. Floyd Mayweather beats Juan Manuel Marquez. Shane Mosley jumps in the ring, calls out Floyd Mayweather. And all those fights happen. That's a big part of boxing. Why would you say, oh, y'all need to stop calling out fighters? This is what everyone wants. This is what everyone wants. What makes this situation so ironic, I mean, there's so many things, but Tim Bradley, he was the Desert Storm. Tim Bradley went after everybody when he fought at 140. He wanted all the smoke at 140. And that's why it was so funny, because he also said in his interview, he said, yeah, and you ain't got to go after all the belts. There's too many sanctioning fees. You got to pay all that money. And he kept saying, I think it's cool just to get one belt, 2 belts. You don't need to try to go get all the belts, all them sanctioning fees you got to pay. But last time I checked, Tim Bradley, he went after all of the belts at 140. In fact, I believe at one point he had all the belts. Tim Bradley always called fighters out. From Manny Pacquiao to Juan Manuel Marquez to the fighter who passed away. What's his name? What is his damn name? What's his name? Killed his wife. Edwin Valero. Tim Bradley was calling out Edwin Valero, and Edwin had no interest in fighting Tim Bradley. The only person Edwin wanted to fight was Manny Pacquiao. Tim was calling him out. This is the type of fighter that Tim Bradley was. So when you hear him talking about the situation with Teofimo, it kind of sounds like he's a father trying to protect his son. It's almost like he's telling his son, look, man, I don't want you to go through the hard road I went through. I don't want you, to go, see, I can do that, but I don't want you to have to go after all the tough guys and call out all these guys. I did all of that for you, so you don't have to do it. I mean, to me, that's the way Tim Bradley is talking right now. All of the things he's telling Teo not to do, Bradley did it. All of the things he's telling Devin Haney not to do, or all these young fighters, don't call out, stop calling people out, don't try to go get all the belts. He did all of these things. So it doesn't really add up. It really comes off like he's just talking like an ESPN company man. Because that's really what it sounded like. It sounded like he was trying to repeat everything that a Teofimo or a Joe Tessitore would say. But he messed up when he said it's a risk. It's too much of a risk to take a fight like that against Devin Haney. It doesn't even matter. After that, it doesn't matter if you try to tell people, oh, well, I'm picking Lopez. But once you say it's a risk, you're telling too much of the truth. Because this is exactly what Teofimo is showing us, that it's too much of a risk. There's no other way you can explain Teo turning down $4 million just to be offered 1.25 by his own promoter. So Tim Bradley can say, I know that's what the fans want. I know the fans, they want to see all these fights right now, but you got to understand this is a business. And he also said, this is not the UFC, where it's just one entity, it's just one person that calls all the shots like Dana White and how the fights can be made, which that is true. It is easier that way because they're forced to take those fights in that situation. But still, when he says, I know this is what the fans want, I know the fans want to see it, but they don't understand the business. But if we're talking about the business aspect, if no one is tuning in, that's bad for business. So you can't say, I know the fans want these fights, but you got to look at the business aspect. Trust me, TV views is a huge part of the business. This is the exact reason why Bob Arum did not want to invest in this Lopez versus Kambosos fight, because he feels this is not a marquee fight. And if it's not a marquee fight, it's not going to make a lot of money. And we already know Lopez versus Haney, Lopez versus Tank Davis, Lopez versus Ryan Garcia. Those are the fights that generate money. Guys, I can tell you this for a fact. The majority of boxers that avoided a particular fighter for years and years and years, they end up losing to someone else. And a lot of times they'll lose to a cherry pick. Basically like some type of comedy skit where you see somebody being chased, they're running from the person, they're looking back as they're running from the person, all of a sudden they run into a damn tree and the tree knocks them out. This happens a lot in the sport of boxing. That's why I say it's terrible advice to say, nah, man, leave that big ass bag of $4 million on the table. You keep fighting for that 1 million, that 1.2, and you keep beating as many C-level opponents as you can. And then when you're ready to cash out 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, then you fight somebody like Devin Haney. Then you take that kind of risk. But with that plan, there's a very good chance that you ain't going to even reach a Devin Haney, a Gervonta Tank Davis, or someone else. Because then you're probably going to be going into those fights with losses on your record. And that's the only reason you're willing to take the fight then. And now you ain't only the B side, you might damn near be the C side when you fight the fighter then. Guys, it tells you everything you need to know when you think about the fact that no one is trying to protect Devin Haney. No one is telling Gervonta Tank Davis, nah, man, wait 3 to 5 years before you fight someone like that. That's too much of a risk. We don't hear anyone doing interviews saying there's too much risk in fighting against Teofimo, fighting Ryan Garcia. There's too much risk, right? You guys have to understand how the business works. The promoters have to protect their fighters. They're not saying this about Tank or about Devin Haney. They're only saying this about fighters like Ryan Garcia and Teofimo Lopez. And that tells you the whole story. That tells you the whole story right there. Every sports fan watches sports to see the best teams play against the best. They know that when it comes to sports like football, basketball, even soccer, at the end of the season, there is always going to be a conclusion, and you're going to find out who the best is in that sport at that time, right? This is the same reason why fans watch boxing. They don't watch boxing to see who the most protected is, who's pound for pound the most protected fighter in the game. Fans don't watch boxing to see fighters go up against C-level opponents that we've never heard of. And this is the reason why it doesn't matter how many old media members, Chris Mannix, Tim Bradley, Max Kellerman, it doesn't matter how many of those guys try to protect Teofimo. Because at the end of the day, boxing fans watch boxing to see the best fights and to see who's going to be the last man standing when all of the best fight the best. Something else, fighters like Tim Bradley, they need to stop saying. They need to stop saying it's too young. We need to start encouraging these fighters. If you take an L, you can bounce back. That's what David Benavidez said. And this is funny because David Benavidez is only 24 years old. He wants to fight Jamal Charlo, right? And that's exactly what he said recently, talking about the Jamal Charlo fight. He said, you know, people have to stop worrying about losing. If you lose, you just bounce back and you come back stronger. Manny Pacquiao was knocked out twice before he became a superstar, before he became pound for pound the best fighter in the world at one point. That's how the UFC is structured. In the UFC, you lose, you come right back 3 months later, like it never even happened. That's how the NFL is. That's how the NBA is. Team loses this week, they're right back out there playing against another team the following week. This is why, once again, in boxing, people have to stop saying this. People have to stop saying, oh, it's too much of a risk. A risk of what? Losing? Okay, you lose, you come back. This is the reason why Al Haymon has been so successful at making a lot of big fights that would have never happened if it wasn't for, you know, those fighters working with Al. I say this all the time. For example, when it comes to Adrian Broner, I know for a fact Broner didn't want to take the Sean Porter fight because Broner was still fighting at a smaller weight class. That's why it was at a catchweight. And it took a while for negotiations to conclude, but they made it happen. You know why? Because Al Haymon, he tells these fighters, don't worry. If you lose, I'm bringing you back. You're still gonna make money. You're not gonna get knocked all the way back to the end of the line. And that's exactly what happened with Broner. Broner, he lost to Sean Porter. He came back 3 months later, fought for another world title, and got a big ass payday. That's how it's supposed to be. But there's also too much pride involved in boxing. You may not want to lose to someone in particular. You may not want to lose to a particular race. There's a lot of factors. There's a lot of reasons why a fighter would say, forget that. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And that's what we're seeing right now with T. He's saying, forget that. He's saying the same thing that Tim Bradley just said. Nah, that's too much of a risk. That's too much of a risk. I don't care how much money they offer me. It's too much of a risk to fight Devin Haney. I remember Tio, he had said in an interview, he said, man, if I fight Devin Haney, I just gotta knock him out. I just gotta knock him out because I hate him so much. When I heard him say that, and now that we know he's not fighting him, there's a very good chance he's also saying, man, there's no way I could lose to this guy. There's no way I could lose to a Devin Haney because I just hate him so much for whatever reason. Even though when Devin Haney confronted Teofimo in that interview that you guys always see me play, they looked like they were best friends. They looked like they were complete best friends. So I don't know where all of this, you know, I hate him so much comes from, because the only thing that Devin has ever done is challenge Tio to a fight, which is what boxers do by default. So once again, man, it doesn't matter how many people try to protect Teofimo. The bottom line is just the fact that they have to protect you. Just the fact that they're telling you, oh, no, don't fight Devin. That's too much of a risk. They're telling you that Devin Haney is a dangerous fight. But once again, ain't nobody telling Devin Haney that Tio is a dangerous fight. And that tells the whole story. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo de Key Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodekey.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.